everybody. And we are now sitting down in conversation with Ann Hoiberg. Ann is the head of the Ann Hoiberg Women's Center and also president of the board of the Women's Museum of California. I'm also joined by Jenny Camhi. Jenny is the director of the Hive at Leichtag Commons. And as many of you know already, this season, the Hive and the San Diego Center for Jewish Culture have partnered to make it easier to bring Jewish cultural arts to even more people in San Diego and beyond. Thank you, Ann, for joining us. Thanks, Jenny, for being a part of this as we begin to dive into our celebration of the Centennial of the Suffrage movement, women gaining the right to vote. And this has been a huge part of your life. You've dedicated your career to these kinds of issues, to women's health, to women in military, a number of other things. Just first and foremost, what does this centennial mean to you?
The centennial means a great deal to me because we are celebrating the long-term suffrage movement. And if we look back to 1776 with the Declaration of Independence, within a year, the start of each of the 13 states to disallow women the right to vote began. So by 1807, all 13 states had passed legislation disallowing women the right to vote. And my question has been, why? Why would they disallow women the right to vote? And so women really started working on this issue beginning in 1848 officially. Many Quakers, many women were totally involved in the abolition movement. So in 1848, it began the struggle, the 72-year struggle for women throughout the United States to get the right to vote.
And then in terms of your career professionally, where did you enter? What were the motivations to lead you down this path?
Well, when I became a research psychologist for the federal government, the military had stopped the draft. And what is the military going to do if you no longer are drafting men into the military? So they had to turn to women. And I was asked to do a journal edition on, and it was titled, "The Military Turns to Women as New Manpower." So I started doing research for the federal government on, well, what can women do? What would women bring to the military? What are their skills? And it became kind of a struggle because so many people in the military did not want more women. And I got to the point where I said, well, who's more cost effective, men or women? And it turned out that women are more cost effective because women don't have many medical issues other than pregnancy. And men have motorcycle accidents, they get drunk, they have drug problems. So when you looked at the total cost to the military, looking at men going AWOL, men getting in fights, all the issues related to men and how you put a dollar sign on that, women are indeed more cost effective. Of course, the leaders back at the Pentagon didn't necessarily want to read that report either, but I did get it published. So that started me on this push on what is it we can really do to take advantage and have our societies improve because of the strengths of women. And the North Atlantic Treaty Organization invited me to put on a week-long conference in Lisbon and look at women and the world of work. What are the issues related to what women face when they do go to work? So I invited all the leading researchers throughout all of Europe and the US in Canada. And we met in Lisbon for a whole week and worked on this issue of women in the world of work. And when I returned to San Diego, I had to compile a book on what was accomplished at that. I decided that I really needed to become active in our community. And I wanted to be active not only globally, but socially and locally. So I joined the United Nations Association, and a key issue that came out of the Lisbon Conference, and this was in 1980, was we need more women elected to public office. So I joined the National Women's Political Caucus and started recruiting and training women to run for political office. And what's fascinating to me is at one point, every single one of my elected officials was a woman except for the president. And this was in 1992. So I had two senators, both women, Boxer and Feinstein. Lynn Shank, oh, she was my representative in the House of Representatives. And Shirley Weber was in our school board. Christine Keogh served on the city council. Dee Dee Alpert was in the assembly, Lucy Calais in the Senate. My cup runneth over. Every representative was a woman. So I think this is crucial that we do get more women involved in the political arena. We know from those countries that have women leaders, those are the most peaceful countries in the world. And the countries at the highest percentages in their parliaments or congresses are also the most peaceful countries. What could be better? So this is one of my key issues, getting more women elected to office. And another thing is we need to end all forms of violence against women. I know the Me Too campaign has been highly effective in addressing issues in the workplace. We also have Title IX working on issues related to our college campuses. So we are making great progress there, but however, the home setting is where we have just a too high percentage of intimate partner violence going on. So those are important issues to me, and I continue to work in those areas. How do we get more women elected to office, and how do we work to really make our societies more peaceful, less violence, especially in the home? But now we're seeing so much of it in our communities, so that too is a key issue. And of course, this will all eventually lead to peace, and what could be better for our community and our economy if we could just eliminate the high cost of militarism.
And I have a follow-up question for you. First of all, what an incredible trailblazer you are. And I would be so curious, as a woman in the workforce, as an emerging leader, what advice or suggestions or tips? I mean, you must have gone through working in the military in the times that you did and working in the political landscape within San Diego. If you have any words in terms of, women in this position now, and suggestions for perseverance and how you managed yourself this incredible career path that you've had.
Well, thank you very much. That was lovely to hear. However, when I look at so many young women, I just see so much energy there, and I see so much interest in social change and social justice. All you have to do is look on the news to see who's out there reaching out in the community and trying to make change. What fascinates me about the suffrage movement here in San Diego, the women didn't want to protest. They didn't want to protest, and that seems to be the way to go today. The women back in the 1911, they wanted to use persuasion. And so they were just going to persuade men to vote for women's suffrage. So I'm kind of intrigued with this difference: protesting, persuasion. So I think we need to work on both elements because in the past, persuasion was extremely effective in getting women the right to vote here in California. So
Can you shed some light, Anne, on the methods and the means of persuasion? And is this a good time to bring up some of those key figures as well?
it is a good time to bring those up. Why don't we look at maybe the third slide or fourth? Keep going. One more. Dr. Charlotte Baker came with her husband, Dr. Fred Baker, to San Diego in 1888. They were both doctors. Can you imagine two doctors showing up in this sleepy, wild, and woolly community? She and her husband were welcomed within 2 days to the San Diego County Medical Society. She ended up delivering more than 1,000 babies, and she never lost the life of a mother. This was unheard of in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Childbirth was the second leading cause of death for women. Anyway, Charlotte would deliver a baby in the morning, and then in the afternoon, she would turn her attention to civic duties. And she thought it was very important that women should have the right to vote. So in 1911, she headed the San Diego Equal Suffrage Association. And she had a cadre of women, and those women became captainesses. And they would go into a home and meet with a man who was a registered voter, and they would sit and talk to him about the importance of women getting the right to vote. And they wouldn't leave until that poor man said, okay, I'll vote for women getting the right to vote. So this was their form of persuasion. They also did what they called automobile campaigning. One of the women's husband had a touring car, and they decorated it, and they decided that they were going to talk to men throughout the county. So they left on a Monday morning. One of the woman's daughters could drive, so she drove this touring car. They left for Oceanside. It took about 2 hours to get there in the dusty, rutted roads of that time frame, 1911. They talked to men there. They went on to Escondido that night. The next day they were in Fallbrook talking to men, urging them to vote for women getting the right to vote. They ended up in Ramona, their third day on the road. Can you imagine how horrible the roads were that it took so long for them to cover our county? And then they came back to San Diego and continued speaking out, not protesting, persuading, trying to ensure that women should get the right to vote. And San Diego County men did come through and vote for women getting the right to vote. What's amazing to me was the total number of votes counted throughout California was less than 250,000. So you can just see how small our state was back in 1911. So women did get the right to vote in California, becoming the 6th state to grant women the right to vote. This is 1911. Now in 1878, Congress was first debating whether or not women should have the right to vote, and Congress decided no. So during each session, it would come up and they would say no, no, no. And it took until 1919 until Congress finally said, yes, we need to ratify and see if our states want to ratify the 19th Amendment. So the vote went out to the states. Will you ratify the 19th Amendment? By that time, 15 states had already granted unrestricted suffrage to women. So it took until August 18th to decide whether or not women would get the right to vote throughout our country. Tennessee came through as a 36th state. And so it was ratified August 18th and then certified in August 26, 1920, that women throughout our country have the right to vote. Of course, not all women really were able to vote, but on the books, it is in our Constitution.
And can I ask you a follow-up to that? I don't want to fast forward too far ahead, but there's so much divisiveness and hate in the community right now with, rise in racism and anti-Semitism and misogyny, and you mentioned domestic violence still in the home. And I'm just wondering where you see opportunities for intersectionality in our activism right now. And is that different than in the past? Do you see more opportunity for intersectionality amongst these groups in this current present moment that we're in?
Well, I think the opportunities are there, and we have such a plethora of organizations throughout this country. We have close to 2 million nonprofit organizations, and all of them working on a particular form of social justice. And how do we come together and, as you say, bridge our differences and come together for the betterment of society? And this is going to be the challenge. But with all of these nonprofit charitable organizations, it just seems that it's such a natural for all of us to come together and look at the common good and bring together all of us. It just seems like the opportunity is now, and we really need to do something to unite us. I'm not sure.
Great question and answer there. I enjoyed that exchange. And as we honor the pioneers of the movement, were there any key Jewish players back at that time, and how has, what is the intersectionality of the suffrage movement and Judaism?
Well, unfortunately, in all of my research, I wasn't able to identify any key players who were Jewish. I know Gary Ferdman has been working on that, and he identified 70 throughout our country, which is pretty amazing. 70 Jewish suffragists. Wow, that's phenomenal. But locally, I haven't been able to specifically identify Judaism among any of the wonderful women who were involved in the 1911 campaign and also the 1896 campaign. But I think now that I'm more in tune to this, I'll look more closely and see, what I can identify. I know there was a controversy about Black women. There certainly was a controversy about Native Americans and also Chinese immigrants. So there was that divisiveness as far as bringing all women into the fold. But I haven't found anything related to anti-Semitism as far as the vote going to Jewish women. So I don't think it existed, but I need to dig deeper and look at, well, who were the key players and how many of them were Jewish?
Great. Well, Anne, I know Jenny and I appreciate your time today, and it's exciting for us to, with the Hive and with the CJC, to come together to present events in partnership. And thank you for a lifetime of work in this arena. And I consider myself fortunate that we've had you here tonight, and hope we can consider you a friend of the program now. I think as our suffrage programming continues, we should have a lot more conversations. There's a whole lot more to get into, but for the sake of kicking things off today, I think this is a nice place for us to tie it up. Jenny?
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be in conversation with you, Anne.
Oh, thank you. And you've really inspired me. I'm going to really get into the histories more of these women. And of course, Gary has been such a trailblazer in identifying so many amazing women. And so I'll be reaching out to him, and we'll come up with what was going on in the Jewish community back in 1896 and 1911. So I thank you for giving me this opportunity. It's just been a joy for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne.
Thanks, Anne. Thanks, Ryan.